31 questions for atheists? This could go really, really well, or really, really badly. Place your bets. The show's about to begin. This list of questions came from a video by Godless Mom where she encouraged other atheists to give their answers for the same list of questions. Okay, I'm game. I really have no idea where this list came from, but there are some interesting ones in here, so let's get started answering 31 questions for atheists. How would you define atheism? Okay, well that's not that hard, it's in the word itself. Theism, taken from the Greek theos, means gods, or in this case, the belief in gods. The prefix a means without. Taken together, atheism literally means without the belief in gods. It's not a belief that there are no gods, although certainly individual atheists can decide that for themselves, but in general terms, it's not believing in gods, full stop. Do you act according to what you believe, that there's no God, or in what you don't believe, the lack of belief in gods? I've seen this question a lot. In fact, I just had some theist over on Reddit try it today, and when I wouldn't answer how he wanted me to, he ran away. Because first off, I don't believe that there are no gods. I simply haven't been convinced that there are, and thus I don't believe in them. My life is not at all influenced by my atheism. If religion went away tomorrow, my life wouldn't change at all. I'd just stop calling myself an atheist because it would have no meaning and life would just go on. Do you think it is inconsistent for someone who lacks belief in God to work against God's existence by attempting to show that God doesn't exist? That assumes that God exists. In fact, that's something that I noticed about a lot of these questions, that they simply presume God's existence a priori, meaning atheists can't actually answer them as they're written. I don't work against God's existence because I have no reason to think God exists in the first place. I do work against people who believe in God's existence because in addition to being an atheist, I'm also an anti-theist. I think religion is harmful to every human being and every society on the planet. But there I'm talking about believers. Their imaginary friend has nothing whatsoever to do with it. How sure are you that your atheism properly represents reality? Again, my atheism has nothing at all to do with it. I hear the claims made by the religious. I am not convinced that those claims are factually correct, hence I reject those claims provisionally until they can come back with some objectively verifiable evidence. Whether my rejection is factually correct or not, I really don't know. I can only go where the evidence, or in this case, the lack of evidence, leads. Maybe the religious ought to find some actual evidence. How sure are you that your atheism is correct? This is the same thing. I have not been convinced by the religious that the claims they are making are correct, hence I do not believe them. The burden of proof is on them, not on me. But since I've been doing this for many, many decades, and I have yet to see a single objectively demonstrable shred of evidence that their gods are real, I'd say my side is certainly more likely to be correct than incorrect, because if they had something intelligent to say, chances are they would have said it by now. How would you define what truth is? The dictionary definition defines truth as that which is true or in accordance with fact or reality. So that's what I'll go with. Truth and fact are effectively synonymous. If someone says that what they believe is true, I want objectively demonstrable evidence to back it up. Too bad the religious have none. Why do you believe your atheism is a justifiable position to hold? Because it's the best supported position that I've seen. rational people do not believe things until there are logical, evidence-based reasons to believe them. And so far, at least, I have seen no reason to take claims made about God seriously. Theists are welcome to try, but I've debated and talked to thousands of them over the years, and every single solitary last one of them has failed miserably. Are you a materialist or a physicalist or what? I'm a realist. I accept the world as it demonstrably is, and I deal with it in those terms. I don't care if it makes me happy. I don't care if it makes me sad. I care if it's factually and demonstrably true. If someone could come up with an objective reason to believe in God, evidence that can be fairly evaluated by anyone without having to believe in it first, I'd believe that God was real. I wouldn't worship it unless it actually earned that, but I'd certainly believe. Now, if only a theist could come up with that evidence. Do you affirm or deny that atheism is a worldview? It's not. By definition, a worldview is a particular philosophy of life or conception of the world. I have no philosophy of life or conception of the world based on atheism. I accept what I see and I reject what I don't. I accept what there's evidence for and I reject what there isn't. That has nothing at all to do with atheism and everything to do with skepticism. Not all atheists are antagonistic to Christianity, but for those of you who are, why the antagonism? Now, honestly, I don't think many atheists are antagonistic. That's just how the religious interpret anyone who challenges their unsupported beliefs. Interpretation is not necessarily reality, and I've seen a lot of very religious people who get personally offended that anyone who does not buy into their beliefs even exists. After all, it's not us who are banging on the doors of Christians on Sunday morning trying to sell them a bill of goods. It isn't us who are throwing gay people off of buildings or dragging them behind cars or trying to deny them equal treatment under the law. You want antagonism, Christians? Look in the mirror. If you were at one time a believer in the Christian God, what caused you to deny his existence? Now, I was a Christian, but I find it kind of funny here that they only talk about the Christian God, not about any of the other thousands of gods that man has ever made up for himself to believe in. But anyway, I was a Christian, and I never denied the existence of God. I simply stopped believing that there was any good reason to believe that God existed. I cared more about the facts than about the religious fantasy. I grew the hell up. Maybe more Christians ought to give that a try. Do you believe that the world would be better off without religion? Damn straight. Do you believe that the world would be better off without Christianity? And I think it's funny that these questions were stated this way, because once you say all religion should go away, what's the point of asking again about Christianity? But yes, I think Christianity needs to die. Same with Islam, same with Buddhism, same with Hinduism, same with Scientology, same with every single religion that pollutes this planet. And as I've said many times before, there is nothing demonstrably true that religion can provide to mankind that cannot be provided as well or better through purely secular means. Religion hurts people whether they're willing to admit it or not. It needs to go away. Do you believe that faith in a god or gods is a mental disorder? Well, it's not a mental disorder per se, but it certainly is an irrational and delusional way of looking at the world. It isn't something that's inborn, it's something that's indoctrinated and removed from questioning because religion is a ridiculous crutch for the weak-willed and weak-minded. Must God be known through the scientific method? Well, if you want me to believe in it, then it must be known through testable, repeatable, objectively verifiable means. There has to be evidence that anyone who wants to examine it can look at and reach a consistent and critically evaluated answer. It can't be something stupid like, look at the trees! If you answered yes to the previous question, then how do you avoid a category mistake by requiring material evidence for an immaterial God? Well, my question is, how do you know it's an immaterial God? Because somebody told you that? Well, how did they know? Because we have no evidence of any kind of anything real being immaterial. We have no evidence that there's any such thing as the supernatural. So why would we believe for a second that this thing that has no evidence is actually so? Stop and think about that for a while. Do we have any purpose as human beings? Inherent purpose? No. But we can give ourselves purpose and a meaning to life. We just don't have to have it assigned to us by some magical man in the sky. That's just ridiculous. But lots of people are lazy and they don't want to think about their place in the world or what they want to do. They want to be mental slaves to an imaginary man. That's pretty pathetic when you think about it. If we do have purpose, can you as an atheist please explain how that purpose is determined? It comes from us. We make our own purpose in life. We decide what we want to do. Surely that can't be a surprise to the religious. Where does morality come from? The same place purpose does. It comes from us. And I know this makes a lot of people nervous because they want universal absolute rules on morality that they don't have to think about too hard. But that's just an unrealistic and ridiculously lazy way to go through life. All the religious have is a book of mythology that tells us that this magical man handed down moral laws, but they can't actually prove it. How is this any better than talking to UFO nutballs who believe aliens are coming to save us all? Are there moral absolutes? Nope. All you have to do is look around to know this. There are no moral codes that are universal across all societies and throughout history. Even murder. It wasn't that long ago that Uganda wanted to pass a law declaring all gays were to be put to death. Muslim countries are often completely fine with rape and pedophilia. Moral absolutes are wishful thinking. Sorry, I live in reality. If there are moral absolutes, could you list a few of them? Well, since there aren't, no, I can't. Moving on. Do you believe there is such a thing as evil? And if so, what is it? Now, certainly we can label things we don't like as evil, but objectively, no. It's just a subjective name for things that people don't care for. If you believe that the God of the Old Testament is morally bad, by what standard do you judge that he's bad? Absolutely I do, and I do so by my own standards. I look at the God of the Old Testament the same way I look at Voldemort in the Harry Potter books. The Old Testament God is a complete douchebag murderer psychopath that caused most of his own problems with his own stupidity. So yeah, not a fan. What would it take for you to believe in God? Evidence. Objectively verifiable and demonstrable evidence that this God thing actually exists in the real world. Absolutely nothing less will do. What would constitute sufficient evidence for God's existence? The same thing that would constitute sufficient evidence for unicorns or leprechauns or anything else in the real world. I know that's not the answer you want, but that's the answer you're going to get. And you can also look at it another way. If this God thing of yours is all-knowing, he should know what it will take for me to believe in him. And since I don't believe in him, either this God isn't real, or this God doesn't want me to believe. Hey, who am I to argue with your imaginary friend? Must this evidence be rationally based, archaeological, testable in a lab, etc., or what? It must be objectively demonstrable and verifiable. It must be open to repeated validation and testing. It must be objective in the sense that anyone can examine it without having to believe anything about its validity in the first place. And let's be honest, that's exactly what the religious don't have. Do you think that a society that is run by Christians or atheists would be safer? Why? Well, Neither. I think a society run by rational people would be safer, because atheism is just the rejection of religious claims. It says nothing about the overall rationality of individual atheists. Do you believe in free will? Free will being the ability to make choices without coercion. Well, that depends on how you define free will. Now, I did a video a while back on how I look at it, and yes, I believe that free will, defined that way, exists. From a non-religious perspective, I can't see that the answer can rationally be otherwise. If you believe in free will, do you see any problems with defending the idea that the physical brain, which is limited and subject to the neurochemical laws of the brain, can still produce free will choices? Nope, because clearly it can. Just because we don't understand exactly how it happens doesn't mean it doesn't happen. That's something common among the religious, that when they find something they can't wrap their heads around, they invoke God as their explanation for their own ignorance. That's not how things work. If you affirm evolution and that the universe will continue to expand forever, which it won't, but then do you think it is probable that given enough time, brains would evolve to the point of exceeding mere physical limitations and become free of the physical and temporal and therefore become deity and not be restricted by space and time? If not, why not? How does one lead to the other? This is just word salad, so let me break this down. Can brains evolve to the point where they can exceed physical limitations? No, because brains by definition are physical. We're not aware of any non-physical brains, so I don't even know if conceptually it's even a possibility. And if consciousness transcends a physical brain, what would contain it? Because again, we're not aware of any consciousness that's not contained within a physical structure of some sort. So at the moment, this is all just a nonsensical question. If you answered the previous question in the affirmative, then aren't you saying that it's probable that some sort of God exists? Even if I did say yes, which I didn't, a really powerful being isn't a god. Even the most generic definition of a god in the dictionary is a superhuman being or spirit worshipped as having power over nature and humans' fortunes, a deity. Being a bodiless brain, whatever that might be, doesn't fit the definition. So, there are my answers to 31 questions that came from Godless Mom's channel. What did you think? Are there any in there that you disagree with, or that you have a different take on? Let me know in the comments. I will say that this list, more than most lists, seems to come from a perspective that God is a foregone conclusion by the questioner. Yeah, I understand that people asking questions are, almost without exception, religious, but there is such an inherent bias present in the way these questions are asked that I often have a huge problem even coming up with an answer because of the way that they're phrased. And these lists often show a profound ignorance of how language works, how logic and reason operate, and what the dictionary says. They figure they can just make up new definitions for words anytime they want because it fits into their religious narrative and agenda. They don't care if their agenda is factually correct or not. It's all about feelings and wishful thinking, and nothing intelligent. I think that's my biggest problem with it all, that you have people with no facts demanding answers from people whose facts totally invalidate the beliefs of the questioner. There's something oddly satisfying in that, even though the religious will never admit it's been done. So anyway, let me know what you think, and I'll catch you all next time.